Today's show is a super cool, casual, unstructured chat with domain investor Braden Pollock. He has no NDAs on his sales. So, for a change, you get to see one investor look at a year's worth of sales and really discuss the trends he's seeing, the different options that he had in selling, and see a bigger perspective from one person's point of view. Enjoy the show. First, serious about online trading? Secure your funds, keep your merchandise safe, and use a company that keeps the buyer and seller protected the whole way through. That's escrow.com. Payments you can trust.
FD was built by domain investors to increase your inquiries, sales, and profit. Forget spreadsheets and archived emails. Manage your entire investment portfolio in one place using a secure and completely confidential platform. Learn more at FT.com. That's EFTY, FT.com.
Hey, Sherpa Network. I'm Tess Diaz, executive producer of DomainSherpa.com. And today we're joined by Braden Pollock. Hi, Braden. How you doing?
Great.
Love the energy you bring. It was fabulous to see you and your lovely wife, Lisa, in Lisbon and on the beaches of Portugal. What a great conference, eh?
Yeah, and beautiful. I'd never been to Portugal at all, and Lisbon is awesome.
Really? You guys travel a lot.
Yeah, but never made it. Portugal's kind of difficult to get to. It's like flying to Africa. There's no direct flights from here from LA, oddly. At least none that I found. So it was like 20 hours door to door.
Yeah, it's a long haul.
But worth the trip. I mean, beautiful and surprisingly inexpensive for a coastal European city.
It's actually the cost of living is the most affordable for a capital city in Europe. Yep. It was just spectacular. Everything.
Yeah, you could we Ubered everywhere, and an Uber ride that was maybe half an hour was like €5.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cheap.
And as you're both vegan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just had like unlimited, amazing food, right?
Yeah, a lot of vegan restaurants in Lisbon.
Yeah, a lot of great Facebook posts.
I can't help myself.
Well, Braden, that's the really unique thing about you is that not only do you have such charisma, but you're really open and sharing what's going on. And that's really what's happening on our show today, too. You know, most domain transactions at the higher level are private for a variety of reasons, but you are uniquely situated actually in that domains, first of all, is not your primary business, but you're still a top expert in the domain business. You got a lot of smarts there, bud.
Milk and mirrors.
I don't believe it for a minute. But on top of your expertise, you also, I suppose, with your extensive legal background, you prefer all your sales be public. So let's talk about them, especially the bigger picture. You know, on DomainSherpa all the time, we have people who may share one sale, and sometimes they'll share the specific domain. Other times they'll say, you know, it was a 3-letter.com or a short one-word dictionary word. And so this is really neat that we can see a scope together of what's been going on more or less the last year from one individual's perspective. This is really special. And I think, again, thank you for your openness in educating the domain community.
Well, when I do deals, a lot of my 6-figure deals, it's, you know, just the lawyers talking. And I always get this contract back from the other side with all this confidentiality. And I just strike through all those clauses and send it back. And then inevitably they're like, wait, why are you striking through the confidentiality? And I explained to them, look, I'm a domain investor. And, you know, if these sales are private, then we don't have comps. And we need comps for the industry. And I said, this is what I do. And, you know, I need to give back to the industry. And so I want to provide these comps. And, you know, it ruffles feathers, but nobody has ever gone away. No one has said, well, fine, then we won't do the deal. Now, That said, sometimes there's slivers of confidentiality. So there might be, what I'll do is I can't announce it for 30, 60, 90 days.
Okay.
I can't announce who the buyer is. Well, I don't care about that, right? That's not relevant. A little delay is no big deal. And who the buyer is, usually you find out who the buyer is anyway, eventually when they put the website up.
You're going to go to their website.
Sometimes not. My Q.org sale, I don't think anybody knows who that buyer is.
The one letter Q.
Yeah, Q.
.org.
Yeah.
You sold.
Yeah. So that, for example, I don't think you can figure out who the buyer was that I dealt with. And that's fine, right? But the price is still out there, the sale is out there, and so now we have that comp. So those are kind of the slivers of confidentiality that usually is a workaround to kind of a broad NDA.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's because of your legal, I mean, I feel like you are, how many offices do you have? You have dozens of employees. You're in the middle of buying your fifth office?
Fourth. So we're opening our fourth office. So we have 2 in LA, 1 in New York, opening one in the Bay Area. And those are direct companies that I control. And then there are, of course, offices for companies that I've invested in, but maybe I own 35% as an example. So I don't really count those. I don't count those staff, that staff either.
Well, I'm wondering, do you think when people are dealing with you that they're aware of your legal expertise and that factors into why they agree? Or do you think that anybody who just really sticks to it, people will work with?
I don't know if they've Googled me or they know. I mean, it doesn't really matter, particularly if it's lawyers dealing with, I have a lawyer that will deal with their lawyer. But I've read a lot of the contracts and negotiated a lot of contract, and so those are my terms. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, if someone said we're walking away from this $500,000 deal, then maybe I would cave. But so far, in my entire career selling names, and I've sold I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of names, it hasn't happened.
Okay. All right. Well, what's the vegan term? Because I think it's time to get to the meat and potatoes. You have a term for that? I don't know.
Tofu and what kind of meat? It could be Beyond Meat.
All right. So you sold, and again, this is really an ancillary business for you, and something that I think is
just kind of a side hustle. I mean, I spend, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes a day on average. That's mostly just reading the blogs. I'm always bidding on names. And of course, I answer my own inquiries, but it's all template responses. So it's pretty quick. So I don't spend a lot of time. I certainly spend much more time on everything else. So yeah, it is a side hustle.
All right. Well, not too shabby for a side hustle. And I know what a passion project it is for you. Someone commented when you were, I forget if you were, I think you were speaking, not moderating, at the conference and this summer. And Lisa was there watching you, taking notes. And it was just really neat to see that even though this isn't your primary thing, how much of a passion it is for you, and how much it's a part of who you are, I think. So super cool.
No question. I wear Morgan's #Domainer t-shirt proudly.
I love it. Shout out to Morgan, who suggested this interview for us. Thanks, Morgan. Although I didn't get a t-shirt. Just well, I'm not kidding, but okay, tofu time. So tell us, let's hear it. What so it's kind of end of Q2. You want to go Q2 to Q2, or just wow us now? This is the time. What are some sales you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about last year. We can talk about what I've done the first half of this year.
I like it.
Too. What would you like? You're the interviewer.
What is the biggest sale that you've done in the last year?
The biggest sale that has closed, because I've got some deals that are open.
Fire.
So I've got an option on a name. I think it's an $800,000 sale, but it hasn't. They've only paid about 10 grand for the auction, so they've yet to really purchase the name.
Okay.
So that's not listed anywhere in my sales, of course. I do list sales that have payment plans.
Okay.
I'll wait until there's some significant payments that have happened, and then I'll list them. I don't always announce them. I don't necessarily email it to Ron yet. But so the biggest sale last year was, I just mentioned, it was Q.org at 500,000.
Okay, and tell us about that real quick.
What can I tell you? I paid 20 grand for that name. And I had it for a year and a half. So pretty good. I
cannot believe you could buy a onecharacter.org like in the last 2.5 years for only 20 grand.
If you buy, well, I bought a large portfolio of names. They weren't all 20. Q is not the best letter necessarily. But I bought a portfolio, including some single character.orgs that were 6 figures.
Okay.
So
are there 26, one letter.orgs out there? You know how like one letter.coms, there are only 3. And
I bought them from the registry.
What?
So I bought them directly from PIR, so they were not yet released.
Oh, the whole package of what you bought.
Yeah. So I'm the original registrant.
Oh, that's a big deal. Okay. And then you sold it on, all your sales are inbound inquiries, right? You're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not willing to work that hard. Yes. Yes. You're gonna say lazy. It's fine. I'm lazy. Yeah, they're all inbound.
You're not shopping them around.
I don't shop them, and I don't have any brokers that are working my names either.
Okay. All right.
And the reason there's a strategy behind it. I'm not gonna say that this is the best strategy, because there's certainly people like Drew and people that are turning names and they're making a lot of money doing outbound. And certainly there's a possibility of finding a buyer that would pay the price that I want for a name. However, I see domains for the most part as appreciating assets. And so I wait for that inbound offer. And if it doesn't sell this year, it might sell in a few years, but it's probably gonna be worth more in a few years anyway. So like I said, not necessarily the best strategy for everybody, but this strategy doesn't require much work. So I go with it.
And for this being, something on the side that you do with so many other projects in the fire, it makes sense for you. And that's, I think
I could give them to brokers, and I've had some conversations about a couple names with brokers that want to represent that particular name, and I might do it. Certainly, if brokers reach out to me all the time because they have buyer requests. Certainly, if they have a request for a name that I own, then by all means, I'm not paying a commission in that case. But if they have a buyer request, they want, I don't know, a fintech name or Drew reached out to me. It was like a pet company or something like that, looking for names, and I said I have leash.com. Great name, right? So he'll pitch that. So that happens all the time, but that's still kind of inbound, right? A broker reach out to me. What names do you have that fit this kind of category?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so Q.com.
Q.org.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, Q.org. What? Anything interesting about the negotiation?
Yeah, actually, it happened really fast. The opening offer was 150,000, and I responded, no thanks, that's too low, and that's it. And he came back with, well, what were you thinking? And I said 500,000. And he immediately replied, this is all within minutes. He replied with, well, I've got approval at 350. Let me go back to the board and see if I can get to the 500. Are you willing to hold it for 24 hours? Not that they're flying off the shelves, these names, right? So I said, yeah, I think I can hold on to it for 24 hours. And he got back to me in the morning. He said, I got you your 500. And that was it. It was a day.
Okay.
It was like 4 emails. It was super fast. Then the lawyers and the contracts and negotiating the contract itself and the terms. So that took a little longer.
And what were the challenges in negotiating the terms?
There weren't
nothing of interest.
The usual.
That legal mumbo jumbo.
You put 2 lawyers in the room, you're gonna get 5 opinions. So the buyer's lawyer drafted an agreement, sent it to my attorney. There was some back and forth, which I don't know if I was copied on. It was sent to me for my signature. I struck the NDA, sent it back, and then I had a little conversation with.
So no sticking points, just the usual stuff.
No.
Okay.
It was pretty easy.
Interesting. And your strategy, I will say for anyone listening, you've said before, in terms of dealing with buyers, is that you don't really care who they are or research into that. You just have the price in mind that you would sell it for, and it doesn't really matter on your buyer itself, correct? More or less.
Yes, although if I get a high opening offer, I will do some research on that buyer if I know who it is, because I want to know if they're serious. Because I'll tell you, every buy it now 6-figure name that someone's clicked through to buy the name, right, at the 6-figure level, not a single one has gone through, right? It's because people are confused, they don't read, and they put in information and hit buy it now, and then it's never funded. And look, if it's from Nigeria or something like, we see a lot of that, I'm going to assume it's not going to go through. But all the time, I get messages. I got an inquiry today. Somebody's offering me $200 for pineapple.com. Right.
Oh.
I own carpool.com. I've gotten a number of messages, people asking if they can be picked up in Nairobi and dropped off somewhere else. They're not reading it. So a lot of those people will hit buy it now and then of course don't fund. So if somebody comes in with a substantial high offer, I want to see if this is legit before I continue going back and forth.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay. So after Q.org, what's the next one you want to talk about? This is really all you. You cherry pick your list and tell us everything.
Okay, so last year, I sold foodtrucks.com for $250 on a payment plan. I sold packet.com for $350, all cash. I sold a couple legal names, a package, Texas DWI lawyer and Texas DWI attorney.com for $60,000. That was a good sale for that name. I sold a total of 19 names, and some of those were a couple of grand a piece. If there's some legal names that are, DUI attorney Phoenix.com, it's not that great. I sold it for $2,300 or something. Looking at my spreadsheet. I sold Trumped.com for $15,000.
Trumped.com for $15K. Very interesting.
And then there's a bunch of small stuff. So 19 names total for 1.2 million, just shy, 1.198.
Okay.
So that's gross after commissions. And my cost, so my basis on that 1.2 was $79,000.
Wow. That is significant.
I think that's the information that other investors would like to know.
Yeah, I think for sure.
The kind of spread.
Yeah. So $79,000 you invested into these domains.
Right. Of course, that's not what I spent invested last year.
Sure.
That's the basis for those names, for those 19 names.
Okay. And what's interesting to me, Braden, a lot of times when we talk, I don't feel like these are names that you bought in, in 2002 and you've been holding them. These 19 names, what would you say is like the average of how long you've owned them?
That is a good question.
I feel like they're kind of all fresh.
Yeah, I can tell you. So Packet.com, I sold for $350 last year. I had it for 2 years, 2 years and 2 months.
Okay.
Food trucks, I sold that in June of last year. I had that for 11 months.
Wow.
Q.org, I had a year and a half, less than a year and a half. Other names, the legal names I've had for a long time.
But those are the smaller dollar ones, right?
TexasWILawyer.com, I sold the set for $60,000, and one of them I had for 2 years, and the other one I don't know.
Okay.
Probably a little bit longer, but not that long.
Not at all. Yeah. And for 19 names, that's like, forgive me for saying this, but that's not a ton of work for 1.2 million gross. Now it's a lot of expertise that you've built your skill set over so many years being involved in the domain industry. But,
it's a matter of buying right.
Yeah.
Right. So I make a lot of offers and I pass on a lot of names. And I turn down a lot of offers. But certainly not a lot of time went into those 19 names. I mean, frankly, a handful of those, I've got 4 .wine names. 2 of them sold on NameJet. A few of those were buy it now names on Afternic.
.wine, like alcohol, wine? Yeah. Okay.
You've heard.
And
I know you know wine.
I just, the way it's coming through, and for our podcast audience, I wasn't sure if they'd think it was something else.
Yeah, that wine.
And so, that wine you sold 2 of them this last year. Let's talk about those real quick.
Last year I sold 4 of them.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, 4. 2 on NameJet and 2 to end users.
Really?
Yeah.
And can you share what the names were and their prices?
Yeah. Serve.wine and 5star.wine, both on NameJet.
The number 5?
No, spelled out.
Okay. Serve.wine. So really that, what's that phrase people use to show that they match the left of the dot and the right of the dot? They go together. I don't know. But it's a synergy. We'll call it a synergy.
Okay.
But, I mean, definitely that makes sense. It's a logical combination, right? And then 5star.wine. Those both were on NameJet. Nice sales. How much?
$99.
Okay. All right. And what does a new dot?
I paid $30. So
Okay.
These are names. I bought a whole portfolio. I bought 600 or 700 .wine names before the release, and I did not do what, it was a loss. So I sold a bunch on NameJet and then dropped the rest, and I had very few end user sales.
Okay, even though you're in California.
Yeah, I had someone that was working on it with me, and they were going to do outbound and didn't. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think a portfolio like that would need outbound, especially for the new TLD. Interesting.
Not had a lot of luck with the new TLDs. I've had a few sales, but I mean, I haven't purchased many, but it's not been great. I've done a couple acquisitions for companies.
Okay. What were the two that you did sell to end users?
I sold Beautiful.wine
Oh.
and Bulk.wine, and I got 500 each for those.
Okay. And they both came to you. Two separate end users.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, they seem like very separate segments, separate thought processes.
I think there was one this year. Oh yeah, this year there was Star.wine that sold for $4,000.
Interesting. For $4,000, and where did you sell that? Directly through you?
Inbound.
Okay, and that's Star.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So, tell us more about a negotiation you think we should hear about. So maybe the one that you said was a payment plan, or
yeah. Okay, so here's one that since we're talking about new GTLDs, one that probably many have not heard of, .earth.
.earth.
Who knew? So it was an inbound. Somebody needed it. They needed new .earth. Needed. Had to have it. The name of his company, he was in, I think he was in LA, and he was getting on a plane that night to fly to Amsterdam or something to give a speech about his new company. That was the name of his company, and he had to have it before tomorrow.
Oh no.
And I said, well, I don't know anything about this name. It hasn't been developed, so it's probably for sale, but I can try. But you want it live, because he wanted it live, pointing to his site by tomorrow. And I said, all right, well, what's your budget? And he said his budget was was 18.8. I think that was with credit card fees. So it was like 18.5 or something like that. So we agreed on a number that he was willing to pay, and I think he might have gotten a quote. And that's why it's not a number. I don't remember.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, well, you're going to have to pay me now. Like, you're going to need to give me your credit card number. I'm going to need to run it so that I have the funds so that I can go buy it for you. And if I can't get it, I'll give you the money back. But this is the only way. I'm not going to acquire it on your behalf without you paying me first, right?
Sure.
And so he said, okay, give me his credit card number on the phone. We ran it, went through, and then I contacted the owner and I negotiated with him back and forth, and I ended up paying $12,500.
Okay, 12,500 for new .earth, especially in an I think
Which I think honestly is a lot for that name, but I needed to get it for this buyer today. I needed it right away, and so I got the deal. But look, I made $6,300, that day.
Yeah. And how did you have any concerns about the intentions of this buyer, about
it was through somebody. He was referred to me, and so I talked to the person who referred him, and he said, you can trust this guy.
Okay.
So I mean, if he would have done a chargeback, I could have shown them email exchange, and the name had transferred.
Okay.
But it wasn't an issue. Never.
Okay.
He was thrilled, right? Because I literally had the name when I agreed to the terms with the seller. I said, do me a favor. I need this right away. So can you point the DNS to this website right now? I'm like, sure. I'm like, and look, if something falls apart, you can change it tomorrow.
Hmm.
And so he did. And so I emailed my buyer, and it was like an hour or two later, like, check it out. And I had new.earth, and I'm like, click the link, and pointed to his website. So he was thrilled.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that was my quick fix in case the DNS didn't propagate quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
At least we had that redirect.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So he was good the next day.
And I think that's a big deal when when something is time sensitive, that they can know that you can, that a broker can manage that differently than you can on your own. Also,
Certainly.
It sounds like this was for, pretty, from what I'm looking at about, what was up on the site, which has been taken down, but I bet there's a reason for that, from what I'm seeing.
Oh, I haven't looked at it since. But
Yeah.
he certainly doesn't understand the process, so he could not, even if he had done the deal directly himself, he could have saved some money, but he wouldn't have gotten it done.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I felt like the money that I was making, I could provide this service for him.
Yeah, especially, so you really, for your normal 15 minutes a day of domaining, you really dedicated some time to this. And
Yeah, I put in more
that's
time.
a big deal. Yeah.
But and we got it done. So he was very happy. There's value. I don't consider myself a broker. Of course, I've done some acquisitions, one or two a year, but there's value in hiring somebody that knows what they're doing, because it may not be just a clean transfer and you have plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
I was hired once by a law firm as an expert witness. There was some cyber squatting, but it was really somebody that had registered a whole bunch of domain names that were infringing on somebody's mark. He was pissed at his insurance company, so he registered a bunch of domain names.
Ooh.
And the insurance company sued him, and but the corporate firm that the insurance company hired didn't know anything about domains, and so they were referred to me, and so I wrote up it was called an expert report, and so I wrote my report, and the 5 domains that they thought he had dozens. So, and I found the dozens.
Oh no!
And then found everything that he had published with their name, because he had created a web ring and all these websites, and so he was doing a lot. He had a marketing company, digital marketing company, so he had done all kinds of stuff. And I found all of it, and so I found much more than they ever would have found. Right? They found 5 names. I found a lot more because they hired somebody that knows what they're doing.
Right.
Then I had given him some advice on what should be done. I don't even remember now. It was a few years ago. And ultimately, the insurance company decided that they wanted me to write the demand letter because of all the other things. They were just trying to get these names back. I'm like, look, you got to take down all this content from these websites. You need to undo all. So I wrote the demand letter for them. I'm sure the law firm punched it up, but so we did that. Then they folded immediately. The other side folded, and so the law firm came back to me and said the insurance company wants to hire you as a consultant to make sure that everything gets transferred to them, and everything that in your report that you say should be done actually gets done.
Yeah, it's difficult if you don't know what's happening there. Yeah.
So they essentially hired me like 3 times. It was all one billing, but for 3 separate things, because I knew more about this area than they did, right? Because they're just a corporate firm that doesn't do this sort of work. So anyways, that's the value in hiring somebody like me or another domain broker that understands this area.
Yeah. And when you can combine your expertise with your domain expertise, that's just a slam dunk. And that's what they say, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are. Now, you had mentioned, Braden, in Lisbon how you've helped corporations to map out retiring a domain.
Do you want to go? Do you want to finish the sales and do
Oh, all
first
right.
orders this year, or you want to be done with this?
Let's finish the sales. What are you holding out on?
No, just this year.
Okay.
I can just quickly go over it if you want, because we teased it at the beginning, at the top of the show. All right, so let me pull up 2019 purchases, or sales rather. All right, so sales thus far this year, 612,000.
All right, you're right on track. Last year.
Yeah, so it's about the same as last year. There are only 2 6-figure sales, Parsley.com, which is a payment plan, at $350, and Surround.com for $150 back in January.
Okay, and that was cash.
Yeah, everything else is cash, and then there's some 5-figure sales. VelvetRope.com at $35,000, LoveLetter.com at $35,000, BreathCheck.com at $20,000.
Okay.
So 612 in sales, and my basis was 63,000.
63,000. Wow. And how many domains?
11.
11 domains. Okay.
So it's similar to last year.
Very, very similar.
Right?
Yeah.
This year.
Mm-hmm. So Parsley.com, Surround.com. Surround, I think we talked about on a Sherpa already. I'm actually really interested in these 3. You said the 3 5-figures you mentioned: Velvet Rope, love it. Love Letter. Oh, I guess I've got to love that. And what was the third one you said?
Breath Check.
Breath Check. Like, yeah. What is that? Like drunk driving?
Breathalyzers. So that actually, so I had an ignition interlock company, which are car breathalyzers. You have to blow into it sober for your car to start. I had ignitioninterlock.com and several hundred interlock domains. I sold that portfolio a few years ago.
And was there a website and a business that went with it?
Yeah, which is why I didn't report it. But I did get $1.25 million for that portfolio and the websites.
Separate from the business and the website?
Yeah. Separate from business.
That's neat that you pieced out the sale like that, so you can really see. So you got $1.25 million.
Well, really for tax purposes.
For the domain names. Yeah, good for
you.
you.
The day is for tax purposes. But yeah, so that was kind of parsed out. Because I wanted to hold back the domain portfolio, and they said no, they wanted the portfolio as well, which makes sense. So I have acquired a couple names for them over the last few years, and so they came back to me and they wanted breathcheck.com, and I said, "What's your budget?" And they said, "We'll pay $20,000 for it." I said, "I'm sure I can get it for under $20,000." It was at Uniregistry, and so they just sent me, since I have a long ongoing relationship, they just sent me the $20,000. And it actually took me a few weeks to get the deal done. But I paid $14,500. But they knew it. They said, "Here's $20,000. If you can get it for $15,000, then you make $5,000." And so anyways, I worked with Jeff Gabriel on it, and he got it down to $14,500. And so my spread ended up pretty good on that one. For an acquisition, it's not bad.
Yeah, well done. So on acquisitions, are you or just in general on sales, are you noticing any trends as you look at this? You're seeing, looks like certainly similar ROI and sales volume. What are you extrapolating from this as a whole?
For acquisitions?
Not just for all your sales, really.
Okay, all right, because I'm not the person for acquisitions, so I don't do that many. I see the value of two-word.coms going up. And I think one word .nets I think are increasing. I mean, they took a huge hit, and there is a lot of competition for from with .nets because of all the GTLDs out there. So it used to be 10 to 15% of the .com, and I don't think that's the case anymore. But I've sold some .nets for 5 figures that I paid a couple of grand for. So a decent margin for me. But the two-word .coms, they're strong. They're strong. They're typically not 6 figures, but I think there's this $25,000 to $35,000 category for two-word .coms. I mean, I see kind of several buckets. I see a $2,500 to $3,500 bucket, right? A lot of names, most names are sold in that range. And then you've got a $25,000 to $35,000 range where you've got 2 words and some .nets. And then you go up there, you got this 250 to 350 range, which is most one-word .coms fall into that category. And then there's a lot of sales in the $2 to $3 million range, right? A lot, relative. It's a relative term relative to other 7-figure sales. But most of those are not reported because the buyers aren't in the business. It's part of the marketing budget, and they're in the business doing something else, right? So they don't want to release that information.
You did not tell us any of your .net sales. What you got? What you holding out
on? So this year I sold divorcelawyers.net.
Okay.
And that was sold through Uniregistry. It was a buy now, and I got the email in the morning, and it sold for $9,750. And I thought, I sold that awfully cheap. Why sell it so cheap? First thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. I had it a year and a half, and I paid $500 for it. And I checked my notes. I got it cheap. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to put it back on the market cheap, and someone's going to pick it up. And that's what happened.
Okay.
So no work went into that one.
Yeah, that's an incredible price.
I sold, here's one. This is a couple years ago, curate.net. I paid $1,700 for it. I sold it for $12,500, and I didn't have it that long. I want to say less than a year.
Wow. The
buyer called me some months later. Business went under, asked if I would buy it back. I offered him $1,500. And I was nice about it. I said, look, I can't give you anything close to what you paid because I'm going to have to resell it. I'll give you $1,500, but try to sell it yourself. You'll get more money if you can sell it yourself. And if you can't, then come back to me and I'm good for $1,500. And he tried. So a couple weeks later, he called me back. He said, I can't find anyone to buy it. So I gave him $1,500 and I bought it back.
And then you sold it again?
No, I still have it.
Oh, all right.
But I'm in the good.
You sure are. Yeah, maybe it's time to list it with divorcelawyers.net doing so well. So is it two-word.nets as well that you're seeing? The .net?
Not really. With legal names, they're typically 2 and 3 word. And I sell those. When you've got, with legal names, you've got typically it's appended with lawyer or attorney, but you've got practice area and you've got geo, right? So you've got divorce. So you've got divorce versus, real estate. Real estate is not as developed. It's not as popular of a practice area than divorce is, or DUI, or criminal or employment, or so there's other practice areas that are bigger and worth more. Like, bankruptcy lawyer is worth more than patent lawyer. So I look at what the practice area is, and I look at the geo, right? So Tallahassee is not going to be as valuable as Los Angeles. So when you've got a good practice area and a good geo, or no geo at all, which makes it broader, then you can carry a .net or .org.
Okay. And you're coming from, a lifetime of legal experience and legal marketing.
lot of legal.
So maybe not for everyone, but you found what works for you in your area of expertise. And I think our audience can do the same for themselves. Now, what about geos in general? Any thoughts, comments? What are you seeing on geos outside of the legal field? I mean, because most people, if you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer for that specific jurisdiction, right? So there's a reason for the geo search.
Right. You need one within the state, but people typically want not just in the state, but local.
Yeah. But then, so are you seeing geo, do you have any comments on geo outside of the legal field?
I know you're talking about like just city specific, like woodlandhills.com. I'm in Woodland Hills.
Sure. Or, you know, I don't know, Woodland Hills.
But if it's you know, Los Angeles plumber.com, I mean, I think those are still good. Because there's still plenty of plumbers. People search for Los Angeles plumber, right? Or Woodland Hills plumber, right? Local service, I think, will always work on a geo. I mean, you're going to get clobbered by Yelp and Thumbtack and all of those kinds of sites, right? But you know, if you're a plumber, that's a good name, right? It's a really good name to use, particularly if you build a website and do a little work on it.
And if you have the ability to call a handful of plumbers and sell it, that's really where you want to test it before you buy in excessive volume, right? So, okay, all right, good to know. What else do you think we should know about your sales from this past year?
I think everything else, they're all small, a few $1,000 a piece. That were all buy it nows.
Okay.
Which is what I do with kind of that $2,500 to $3,500 range. I just list them, and it's cheap enough for people to click and buy it. You know, they're searching at night and they have an idea and they've had a glass of wine. They're more likely to click the buy it now and put in their credit card number.
Okay.
Less
Yeah.
work for us.
All right. And names in the 25 to 35K range, are those mostly, you know, offers that came into you? And what are those negotiations more often like? How do they progress?
I'm sorry, 2,500 or 25,000?
1,000. Like I'm looking at Velvet Rope and Love Letter.
So Love Letter was actually a buy it now, and that was the biggest buy it now that I've ever had.
Okay. Where, on what platform?
After Nick.
Okay. Shout out to After Nick.
Whoop. And then Velvet Rope was direct. Breast Check was an acquisition. And then everything else is 4 figures.
Okay.
Other than the 2 6 figures this year.
Okay. And you find that the ones that are inquiries are pretty much just like your 6-figure inquiries, where you kind of vet them in the beginning and then.
Yeah. I mean, so last year there was a bunch more legal names that sold that if they weren't buy it now, they're inbound, and my assistant handled it because all my names are priced. And so it'll come into her and she'll quote the price, and if they agree, she'll also upsell them. I can see here last year she sold 4 names to one person. Seniorinjury.com, seniorabuse.com, abuse attorneys, and abuseattorney.com.
Wow. Yeah.
Because you know, they're all the same category, so she upsold the guy. He obviously reached out about one of them, and so good on her. Go Allie.
Go Allie. Now that's a great opportunity on asking about portfolio management. How many domains do you own, Braden, more or less?
You know, I've been trying to cull the list. I'm down to about 3,000, maybe a little bit less.
Okay, so you have 3,000 domains.
Yeah.
They all have prices, and clearly they have categories. Yeah. And how often do you price them?
You know, I'll go through, probably not as often as I should. I'll go through them maybe once a year.
Okay.
Probably not as often. It's probably less than that.
Okay.
I'd like to say it's once a year. Probably not quite as frequent as that.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, and look, my buy it now prices are higher than what I would sell direct because I have to include commissions.
Sure. Okay. Huh. And do you feel like you found your sweet spot at 3,000 domains? You said you were culling that list.
I still have a lot of legal names.
Okay.
So, and I'm happy to, I don't buy them like I used to. I'm happy to sell through those. And
Why don't you buy them like you used to?
Because they don't sell that fast and they don't sell for very much, typically.
Okay.
Typically, they sell for a few $1,000s, and I'd rather focus my energies on a $300,000 name than a $3,000 name.
Sure. And
now the ones I have are good, and so I'm keeping those, right? So I'm not dropping them. I'm just not replenishing that inventory. I'm replenishing my one word and two word, mostly one word.coms. But I still buy 2 words.
Okay. So I've been wondering as we're talking here, how much you've reinvested this year and last year in domain.
Okay. That's a good question.
Both volume of domains and dollars.
Okay, so this year, not a lot this year, and that's due to inventory. I've made a lot of offers and have not picked up. So I've spent about 200,000 this year invested, I should say, because I just can't. Not much out there. Last year, let's see, purchases 500, 501, 850.
Okay.
500 last year. 2017 was 406. So actually, I guess this year is pretty much on track.
Okay, but
but actually, here in 2016, I spent 695.
Okay. And are you concerned that this year you're not finding as much, or your sounds like your offer percentage is more of a challenge? Do you think that's a reflection of what's going on in the market?
There's just not a lot of inventory at that level that's on the market. I mean, panda.com is on the market right now. I reached out and they already have an offer north of 500,000. Well, that's end user, right? So I'm not going to buy it. Is it worth more than that? Maybe not, right? I mean, is it a $700,000, $800,000 name? Possibly, but I'm not going to spend 600 to sell it for 700 or 800. It's tying up too much money. I'd rather buy a bunch of $40 or $50 or $60,000 names because it's more likelihood that you can turn those for 5 to 10x. But there's just not a lot of those on the market. There's a few I've purchased this year that I think are good names. I bought coordinator.com, digitize.com, nibble.com, interlock.com, electrode.com at the Namejet auction in Lisbon. But there's just not a lot out there. And those are, they're good names, but they're not monster names. It's not panda.com, or hero.com, which is on the market.
And you bought those at prices that you feel will give you the same ROI percentages that you've been looking at in the past?
All of them are in the 5 figures, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Those do not sound like 5-figure domain names.
Well, they're not when I'm done selling them.
Yeah, exactly.
But I need to buy them at investor pricing, right?
And where do you find those names?
Well, I know all the brokers, so the brokers let me know what they have. They come up on auction, right? So whether they're at CEDA or wherever,
okay,
I put in bids, but I get outbid.
Yeah. Do you buy any domains directly?
From end users, I have, but very, very rarely. It typically comes through a broker who's
Okay.
either representing the name or has already acquired the name or is representing another investor. That's almost always how I get my names.
Interesting. Okay.
And you know what? Frankly, that's fine, because if I spent the time, if I had the time and I can go out there and go fishing all the time, looking for these names, reaching out to all the end users, I could pick up some names and save some money. However, if I know that the broker is making 10 or 15% on that transaction, and frankly, I would rather, let's say it's a name, I could have gotten it for 30 grand, but now it's with a broker and now I got to spend 33,000 or 34,000. Well, listen, if I'm gonna sell it for 350,000, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Right. And we save all that time.
Yeah. The difference is your time investment.
Right.
And that's
right.
really valuable.
I know I'm paying a little bit more, but that's fine. It's also part of the ecosystem, right? So
yeah,
you got to, the brokers need to eat too.
Yeah. Well, you have always been, as long as, almost 15 years now that I've been in this industry, you have always been a fabulous contributor to the ecosystem. And I think that this show today really is just a reflection of that. Really, really insightful for people who don't know what's going on or don't know a bigger picture or a whole portfolio that's been put together over a year or sold over a year. Really, really interesting stats, great numbers. I do want to ask you next time about retiring a domain, but not today.
Okay.
Any final thoughts before we head out?
No, I think it's helpful for people to see a deep dive on a portfolio, because when you hear about these one-off sales, you don't really know what went into that. Was there a lot of outbound? They spent hours and hours outbounding. How much did they spend? You see like Mike Mann's portfolio, and people are thrilled when they hear about his, $100,000 a month sales, or his whatever, $20,000 a day, whatever numbers he's doing. And the guy's got 350,000 names, right? So just do that math, right? He's got $3 million just in reg fees, roughly, right? Not to mention staff and programmers and everything, right? So he's doing a lot of top line. I don't know how much bottom line he's doing. And I'm not trying to take anything from him. He's been in this business a long, long time, and he knows what he's doing. But you have to consider how many names people have, what goes into it. So if you see people selling every day like Mike Mann, it's because they have 350,000 names. Of course they're going to sell every day. I get inquiries every day. I don't have sales every day, but most of those inquiries are meaningless, right?
Yeah, it's a lifestyle and the business strategy, I think, and the way that each individual combines them for themselves. And I mean, you do it beautifully, Braden.
I mean, look at Uniregistry is another example. What did they do? 50 million or something like that in sales last year? How many brokers do they have? 65, 63, something like that, right? So it's a lot of mouths to feed. And those were brokered names. I mean, some of those obviously were Frank's names. So I don't know what the net is on that, because you don't get to do a deep dive.
Right.
Bruce should get on here and talk about his millions of dollars in sales. He's told me, I'm obviously not going to share it, but it's a very small distributed staff, and he does millions in sales, right? So I'm sure that his margin is way better than Mike Mann and Frank, because the overhead.
Yeah, overhead can make a huge, huge difference. And I think the time that you got into domaining makes a big difference. And that is, to me, the most valuable part of this deep dive, Braden, that most of these names you've acquired and sold within a 2-year window to know. In fact, I think I'm gonna, when I tick the different boxes for where I'm listing this within the DomainSherpa website, I'm going to include profitable flip, because you just covered like 20 profitable flips, domains that you bought and flipped within 24 months or way, way less. And that, I think, is important. People new to this industry, it's easy to assume all the good domains are taken. and you do have a unique skill set and so many years of experience, but the way that you're approaching it, anybody could really do that if they
It's not too late to get in.
talked about it, educated themselves. I regularly get emails from people who are like, when I started domaining, I just went through pages and pages of DomainSherpa videos, one after the other after the other, and obviously, DN Academy is amazing. And there are resources out there, but I don't see why someone else couldn't do the exact same thing that you did today, right?
There's no reason. As long as you have access to capital, that's it. Because it's capital intensive, right? Particularly with the bigger names.
Yeah.
So how many $50,000 names can you purchase and wait?
Yeah.
Right. So that's not for everybody, which is why a lot of people buy the $500 names and wait, and they'll buy 10 of those and hold on to them. So it really depends on how much capital you have or have access to, and how much patience you have.
Good call. Yeah. Well, thank you, for investing 15 minutes a day in domaining, and you give an hour to DomainSherpa, I would say at least once a quarter. That's a big deal. Thank you. An extra thank you. What a statement that is about you and
for you, Tess.
Oh, Braden, you are just a special kind of person, Anyway. Yeah, or a special kind of person. I don't know. But thanks for always coming on. You're a sport.
My pleasure.
All right. See y'all next time.
Bye-bye.